Okay, so we're just going to get started and folks will continue to join here in the next few minutes, I'm guessing. So I just want to say good morning. I'm Amber Edwards. I am the Vice President of Talent Development here at Opportunity Stanislaus. And we are so excited to have the opportunity for this training to work with Becky Shokraii. Becky is the principal consultant and founder of Amplified Human Resources, which is a new HR solutions company based out of Oakdale. They offer talent management, training, compensation consultancy, and benefits management. And I've already been able to connect Becky with one of our investors that had some needs that she was able to take care of. So I'll just say that there's just infinite options for you guys to utilize Becky as a potential consultant. But for today, we're going to learn about employee retention strategies, and I am excited to learn as well. Welcome, Becky.
Thank you so much, Amber. I appreciate it. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for taking time out of your morning. As we've already kind of chatted about, it's 2024, and if you've made this commitment in December, wow, we're already in January and probably wondering why we made this commitment. So thank you for continuing with what you already committed to. I appreciate it. And we're going to talk a little bit about employee retention strategies. The reason why I decided, or Amber and I decided, to really talk about employee retention strategies is it affects our bottom line. And as HR professionals or professionals in the businesses here in our area, it's so critically important to make sure that we're reducing turnover, we're retaining our top talent, and maintaining a positive work culture so that the individuals that come to work every day are able to contribute to our organizations and ultimately maintain success so that we can earn money for the organizations and grow the businesses. So we'll be talking about that over the next little while. And I don't want this to be just me talking at you, so feel free to just cut in. I have no problem with that. It's a small group, so we'll just make this happen. So our agenda this morning is to really just look at how keeping our employees and keeping them happy is going to help us with our productivity and our profitability. I'll introduce the concept. I'll speak a little bit about understanding the importance of retention and just not having that evolving door where employees come and go. And I'll talk a little bit about retention techniques, understanding that it's not one size fits all. And I'm sorry, I don't know all of your organizations, but I do know that having been here in the Valley for quite some time, it's not a one size fits all. So if you've been at one company or you've heard one case study and you say, well, that doesn't work for us. No kidding. It doesn't work for every company. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk a little bit about having a positive work culture and how the perception of one individual or one group may not be the same as the next work group. We'll talk about recognizing and rewarding talent. We'll talk about some of the wellness initiatives that are effective today and are kind of the hot topics today. We'll talk about the impact of all of these things on productivity and profitability and some of the important ways of measuring it. And if we haven't had all the questions and answers and discussion throughout, which I'm really hoping we will, we can throw those in at the end as well. So again, please cut me off at any time because I don't want to be talking for an hour. Ultimately, the concept, I've got a laptop issue here. It's like falling over, so I apologize, is that employees that are retained, employees that stick with the organization for a long time, drive productivity. The more you have to hire employees and start from scratch, the more you're investing in training. And I'm sure most of you have had conversations that we don't want to be investing in training. We need to contribute to the bottom line. But as you know, it's more expensive if you don't train your employees. So really just by reducing the overhead cost and fostering the knowledge, you're able to have an engaged workforce and optimize the overall efficiency. Hanging on to the knowledge that you've invested year over year, you grow your employees and have a better workforce. I think that's probably common sense for some, but if it's not common sense, you really want to hang on to that knowledge that's grown for the business. So understanding the importance of retention. There's a few things that we can look at when we talk about a direct link between employee retention and organizational success. The first I'll talk about is improved productivity. By retaining those individuals who are experienced, we're developing leaders. And having leaders that believe in the business are by far the most likely to develop future leaders. And if any of you have children, we know that there's generational conversations over and over that we've created a mess. And I have a few, so I know I've created a few messes, 5 of them, in fact. It's so important to create better efficiency and develop people that are familiar with the company's processes and reduce that need to recreate the wheel. So by developing overall improved productivity and efficiency, we're developing better organizations. Next, enhanced employee engagement. So longer tenured employees believe in the mission and vision of the organization. They stick around. It's more common for employees to leave an organization in under 3 years than any other point in an organization. So if you have employees that stick around, they're more likely to continue to stay around. Their shelf life continues. So you don't have to develop those programs that say, how do we keep employees engaged? As HR professionals or as business professionals, we're always looking for that next big thing, and employees do it themselves. If they've been around for a long time, they'll continue to believe in the mission of the organization. They develop the culture themselves. And they foster a sense of commitment. Their family is wearing the logoed merchandise. It's just part of what they do. And consistency and performance. A stable workforce allows for consistent delivery. If you've had that salesperson who's been with the company for a long, long time, they have a following. If you lose that person and they go to the next organization, all of a sudden that next organization has your customers. So it's so important to have that consistency. Same thing happens in a production line. If you have a person who's been in production, they develop their own way of doing things. And yes, it may not be within the SOPs, and yes, it might drive people crazy and all of those things. Unfortunately and fortunately, it develops consistency. And so your product quality is the same and your processes are the same. So you develop consistency and performance when you have individuals who have been retained year after year. That tribal knowledge is developed within your organization. And ultimately, because they are consistent, they develop cost savings. That reduced turnover means they've developed a pattern, a sense of developing time and ability to do things faster, quicker, better. You're not having to spend time on training, recruiting, all those things that make you spin your wheels, spend time, spend money, and take away from the company's bottom line. Do any of you guys have an example of how your company has done a good job at any one of those things? Probably not, because we wouldn't be having this conversation. I can think of a few examples here in our area, and I won't name names, but where employees have been in the organization for 50 plus years, and they celebrate those employees. One thing that many organizations can do a better job of is specifically partnering younger employees with those employees who have been tenured for a long time and have been doing the job for many, many years, because those individuals are very, very engaged. They know their job very well. Our organizations often fail to recognize those tenured employees that are very committed to the organization. Moving on to some examples of why it's so incredibly important to retain employees. These statistics you might find are contradictory to one another, and as many statistics are, but it's interesting to see that SHRM, the Society for Human Resources, says that when you turn an employee, it can cost 50 to 60% of that employee's wages to replace them. So if you have an employee who makes $100,000, recognize that's a highly compensated employee, it's going to cost you about $50,000 to replace that employee. Well, that's a lot more money than most employers in our area are going to budget. In addition to that, a study for the Center of American Progress suggests that turnover, now this stat is really ridiculous, is going to cost from 16% to 213%. So if you think about our average turnover in the area is between 20 and 50%, that's a lot of money that our organizations are throwing away. So taking all of those stats, and I recognize that they're all over the place, if we take this case study for just conversation purposes, and we say company X, whoever company X is, it can be your company, okay, faced an annual turnover rate of 25%. And for some of you, that might be a really good accomplishment, but let's pretend it's 25%. And if you're incurring an average of, say, $20,000 cost per turnover, and you reduce that to 10%, you're saving $150,000 a year. Now, if you step back and think, what could I do with that $150,000 a year? What could we do for the bottom line? Could we invest it in our employees? Could we add additional bodies? Could we train our employees? Anybody want to volunteer and share what they would do with that $150,000 for their organization? I hear silence. Misty, were you answering or were you talking to someone else?
No, I was welcoming someone else into the room.
Oh, okay, awesome. No problem. So off the cuff, I think of $150,000 a year, you could use it for an employee initiative. You could use it for a wellness initiative. You could use it for training. There's so many things you could use it for. Thinking about the financial initiatives of an employee and the cost that it takes to train someone, you could almost build an employee yourself. Not with AI or something, which seems to be the thing of the future, or today for that matter. But there are so many things that an employee is, or that an employer is throwing away just by not recognizing the cost of losing their employees. Think about how many times last year somebody said, gosh, I left because I didn't get paid enough, or we didn't budget the increases, so they looked for a new job. The cost of not investing in your employees is not worth it.
Also, Becky, we have a
Yes.
comment in chat. Liberty says that they could upgrade their equipment.
Upgrading equipment, absolutely. Preparing for the future is critically important. And thank you so much. I can't see the group chat. I see the little one, but I can't actually get to it. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. Upgrading equipment. I've heard time and time again, employees complain that they don't have the tools they need to get their job done. So that is fantastic. That's a great example. When employees have the equipment they need to be satisfied, that's a winner. Thank you. So understanding that importance of retention, the key factors that influence employee retention are career growth opportunities. When employees have that ability to learn new equipment, great example, they acquire job satisfaction. They're learning new skills. They can transfer those skills to future initiatives. They feel like they're acquiring new opportunities. They develop the ability to have a positive work environment. With that, if a company is able to offer compensation and benefits that are competitive, so they can feel like they're providing for their family adequately and they're not scraping by, they feel more effective in their life. And if your leadership is strong, occasionally organizations feel like they're stuck or their leadership peters out. And that is actually a technical term when we're talking about leadership that doesn't meet the skill set needed to grow within an organization, then unfortunately it has a negative effect on your organization. So thinking a little bit about career growth first, what can we do as an organization to provide career growth opportunities for our employees? Any ideas? It's hard when there's just a few of us, so much pressure. One thing we can do is provide very clear career paths. So if an employee starts as an entry-level admin, if they know what they can do for the next step, or if they're on a production line, if they know what they can do to be a lead, so that's very clear what they can do for the next steps, gives them hope that they won't be in that position forever. And they're optimistic that they too will have career growth opportunities. That's a huge win for employees. A positive work environment. Nobody wants to go to work every day and be scolded or feel like they're not successful. So that's definitely a win. A supportive culture, having fair treatment, having work-life balance. Oh my goodness, work-life balance today is not what it was in years past. I think we're all struggling with it. And I apologize, I don't know what organizations we're with, but can anyone share with me kind of what we're dealing with? Are we dealing with industrial, or are we dealing with manufacturing? What organizations or types of organizations do we have?
Sure. So we have a good mix. We
Okay.
have folks from manufacturing, we have folks from banking, we have folks from local government, restaurant, hospitality, wholesale and manufacturing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amber. Well, that tells me everybody has to be there. We can't do our jobs if we're not at work, which is really an interesting conversation when we talk about work-life balance. Very hot topic everywhere. But you can still have work-life balance in a positive work environment. We'll talk a little bit more about that through this conversation. Moving it right along, compensation and benefits doesn't necessarily mean you have to be the best, the highest paid in company or the best paying organization, but people have to feel like they're being compensated fairly. Providing employees transparency, especially here in California, where recently we've had to provide information explaining what the pay structure is and what compensation is available to employees. If people understand what their compensation is based on, it really helps them to understand that they're being paid fairly. So, and then that's very different than in years past, when it was very much told to employees, hey, don't say what you make, or don't ask. And that was kind of an old paradigm or a different mindset, and it's not the way it is today. But helping people to understand that they're paid for the job they do, and this is why, and maybe through performance evaluations or something like that. And benefits, obviously another thing that's changed here in California as far as benefits in the last 10, 15 years, having to provide benefits, but not just providing benefits that make sense, so people can provide medical or dental's not required, but providing benefits that allow them to support their family. And then strong leadership. Although I mentioned it, it's so critically important that leadership is not strong in the way that they're holding them with a whip and chain. They're actually treating them fairly. It's so important that people feel like they're treated fairly and that they have a sense of direction. So a lot of it is people today want to be treated like people, and they want to be treated fairly. It's a different paradigm than it was in the past, and all of our generations, all of our individuals within our organizations have to be prepared to grow as a team. So some of the effective retention techniques are really about identifying and analyzing successful approaches and strategies for your organizations. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of businesses in our area have individuals that have been in the companies for a long, long time and have grown with the organization. It's a great opportunity for mentorships and career development programs. Some companies have been very, very successful implementing mentorship and career development programs that allow for people to partner with senior employees to understand what direction they're going to go. Not in our area, but a great example is Google. They have had successful mentorship programs that have helped employees partner and contribute to their success. Different model than what we're used to here in the Valley, but an excellent way for people to see that there's opportunity. And I think we can learn from that. Flexible work arrangements. So I know we talked about the fact that the way many of our jobs are structured, we have to be on site. So remote isn't necessarily realistic, but can we look at jobs differently? A huge hot topic is looking at the way people are demanding to put their families and their lifestyles first. Different in the years past, and I think COVID had a huge impact on the way we look at people's lives. And there's a lot of laws that have come into place in the last couple of years that not only encourage but require us to look at lifestyle differently. Some things that I have seen is changing work schedules, work structures, split schedules, more flexibility on time and start times, end times, hours worked, things like that. So it's not a one size fits all. Again, I'm not saying, hey, let everybody work from home and not get work done. That is not what I'm recommending. I don't think that works. But what I do think is that we have to look at things differently, and we have to partner with our managers to make sure that the job and the business is first, and that the people are a good partner to that business. So again, there's a lot of solutions. What works for one company does not work for another. Do any of you guys have any suggestions that have worked, or any stories to share on the flexible work arrangements? It's always a hot topic. No. What I do find, oh, go ahead, Cheryl.
I think that it depends on the industry. I'm in banking, and so because I'm in headquarters, we may have the ability to do maybe a hybrid schedule because we're not client facing, but many of our employees are client facing. So it is difficult to do like a hybrid schedule. However, what we can do and what we often do is we'll say, if a part-timer is working, we can be much more flexible by saying, okay, well, you can work Tuesday through Friday and, you know, not work on Monday, and we'll make it a 30-hour work week, or we'll make it a 35-hour work week, and you can not work, you know, a particular day. So I think that in regards to a flexible work arrangement, it can be done at any level. It's just a matter of, you know, how you can make it work.
I agree, Cheryl. That's a great example. I think we have to look at flexible work arrangements as it can be done. Now we just have to figure out how. And part of that challenge is working with the management team to come to that mindset and that partnership, because it definitely is not an easy challenge. Great example. Thank you. Moving on to recognition and rewards, again, not a one size fits all. Banking may be different than industrial manufacturing, but people want to be appreciated. And it's not hard to say thank you. You have to make it a point to make the effort, and acknowledging employees' efforts and recognizing them is critically important. For example, one scenario that I think of is Adobe made a specific point, especially through COVID, when their employees were having challenges. They actually made a recognition program on attendance, and they reduced their turnover rates. So there are situations, and again, some of these examples seem very techy. I apologize for that. But for some reason, they like to put it out there on the internet to share. And I didn't want to call any of our local friends out. So part of that is the way it works, fortunately and unfortunately. Recognition is huge. I've known some of the employees in manufacturing really like to be publicly recognized, and others would rather crawl underneath a table. So depending on who you have in your workforce, and you know who your employees are, recognition and rewards is huge. One thing that I would advise for recognition and rewards is if you start something, be prepared to continue it. There's nothing that is more of a demotivator than starting something and not finishing it. Go ahead, Amber.
So Marianne from APCO commented on the first topic, saying that a lot of their team members work remotely because they're not customer facing, and they just have a lack of office space. But then regarding this, she said using communication tools such as an electronic newsletter to highlight team members that support the company culture and core values is a good idea.
Absolutely. And I think the electronic newsletter is a great way to bridge the gap from um, different generations as well, because electronic newsletters have been around for a long time, and employees that have been used to that type of media still embrace it, and it can be printed well. Whereas some of the younger generation are always looking for something that's newer, quicker, faster. So I think that's a great tool for everyone. Carol, yeah, go
Yep.
ahead.
So in my previous experience, a previous company that I worked for in Cincinnati, one of the things that we had for recognition and rewards is we had a specific day. I mean, you could do it anytime to reward or recognize an employee, but we had a specific day and we called it Spirit of the Pin. And in our company, we all wore pins for our as an employee. And you had this card that they would that you could purchase for $1 in the branches or in at headquarters, and you would basically reward your peers, your boss, anybody in the company, and you would give them a Spirit of the Pin. And it was just something that it was done on that particular day. And you can do it anytime, of course, but we did that as a recognition. And that was always a really, really fun time.
How fun. You really hit a great point, Cheryl, with peer recognition. That has more value than any other type of recognition I've ever seen. People love peer recognition, and the pins, it sounds like so much fun. It reminds me of the Disneyland pins,
Yeah.
and it just adds so much more fun.
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. This makes it so much more enjoyable. So, moving on to the next point, company culture and alignment. The examples we've talked about, I think, my instant thought, and not to call it out because I love that idea, the pins from my experience a lot has been food manufacturing, and I instantly thought, oh my gosh, it wouldn't work. But in so many others, it's absolutely perfect. So it's so important, again, to know that your experience has to align with the company culture and the environment. Know that whatever we're talking about, not everything is one size fits all, but you can make it work. You just have to figure out how. And I've got to figure out how to make that work for whatever I do. So keeping in mind, company culture is not necessarily what the management team thinks it is. It's what the employees think it is. And it's really how employees feel a sense of belonging. I'm sure many of you have heard the stories of Zappos, where they had such a unique culture. It was a very flat organization, but because of that, they had a low turnover. Employees were empowered to do things. They had very high employee satisfaction, and they knew the organization inside and out. There's so many examples of what makes employees want to be a part of something. So some different tailored effects or techniques that make organizations successful. We talked a little bit about technology and how they take one approach. An example that's really important or very common in technology is innovation and learning. Technology often does things that are very focused on innovation, learning, providing new opportunities for individuals. In healthcare, you might see individuals doing a lot of mentorship, career advancement, partnership with more skilled individuals. In hospitality, again, these are not one size fits all, but it's very common. Employee recognition is very common in hospitality. In industrial workplaces, you may see a lot of lunches, you'll see a lot of food. Again, focusing on the individuals within your workplace. The individuals within the workplace are a fit for their organizations for a reason. And so retention is definitely going to be based on the people you have, and you know them better than anyone else because you're working with them. Amber, did you have something to add?
Yes, Marianne at APCO chimed in and said basically that it starts with the onboarding, and they give out a trifold with the information on their mission and vision, their core values, and their company promise at that time.
Absolutely. Marianne, to add to that, do they partner with somebody who truly believes in those missions, visions, and values, or is it just a written piece of paper?
No, it's definitely not a written piece of paper. It is part of our process that we use from beginning, and one of the first questions that we ask, if the candidate has researched our company, understands what we do, and aligns with our core values.
So important. I think part of retaining individuals, to your point, Marianne, is not only getting them to understand this is who we are, but this is what we believe in. It's not just a sign on the wall. It's what you're going to feel every day when you walk through the building or through the organization. Excellent point. Thank you. So again, depending on the organization, you're going to see a lot of different experiences, a lot of different types of scenarios, and they come from different reasons, different points of experiences. IBM had a scenario that's still in place today. They had a 20% increase in employee retention just by putting in a mentorship program. And this doesn't have to be just tech. But this is the scenario that worked really well. They recognized that people with like skills benefited from being mentors. So think about engineers with engineers. Again, doesn't have to be tech. You might have somebody who's a nurse with a nurse, or a receptionist with a higher skilled admin, but identifying like skills and partnering them with someone who's of a higher level with the like skills and developing those individuals. By supporting the individuals, they were able to help them identify career paths and improve their retention. So that was a great example that they were able to put in this program and improve their retention, because these individuals were able to mirror what they expected in their career path. Marriott International has put in a great program called Pathways. And with Marriott International, it's very interesting. They, very similar to what Marianne was sharing, they start from the beginning, from the recruiting process. And they recruit students, they recruit veterans, they recruit individuals that they believe will fit their organization with the path in mind. And so their pathways identifies that these professions, these experiences would be successful. And by doing that, they've had a 15% reduction in their turnover. Lastly, I want to talk about Salesforce. And Salesforce, again, different reasons, different experiences, but Salesforce is an interesting scenario. We all experienced COVID, whether we loved it or hated it. And as a result of having to send their employees away from their building, they actually had a 30% decrease in turnover by having their employees work remote. And they had so much success in retaining their employees, they decided they would keep it that way. And then they restructured their home offices or their businesses or their building to become a more of a hub of structure to collaborate. And so that they were able to use the Salesforce office differently and retain their employees. Now, there are also many case studies where people were not as successful and were hanging out at home doing nothing. So depending on how you look at it, there are a couple different ways to identify case studies and retain. And you have to look at your organization and say, oh, can we partner people to be successful? Can we recruit from this area? And I do recall Amber was saying, hey, I think we have a job fair coming up. So maybe you can look at some opportunities there as well. But there's definitely ways to find employees that are going to align with your organization. With all of that being said, it's so important to create that positive work culture, to create that sense of belonging, to align with your values, just like Marianne was saying, and to keep your employees engaged. That sense of belonging really starts with that company fostering a sense of belonging and helping employees to feel valued. Years ago, Marianne, did you? No, I'm sorry. I thought the microphone was gone. I apologize. There was an employee that I worked with that absolutely did exactly the opposite of what we would want with a new hire. And I always think of this story. When you have a new hire, you want them to feel like they belong in the organization. And we had an employee who used to make it very clear when he would have someone come in that his lunch table was his lunch table, and he wouldn't allow new hires to sit there, and was almost like the high school bully. And eventually this became so apparent that his manager had to call him out and say, hey, would you want this to happen to you? And overall, the organization was a great company. The culture was wonderful. But when I think about that, how would you feel if you were the new hire walking into that organization? Honestly, I think pretty crappy. So when we hire new hires, we have to be aware of those little nuances of what one toxic employee can do to your culture. It's so important for your employees to have a sense of belonging from the minute they walk in. Feeling valued. You know, when a new hire walks in and they don't know what they're doing. They could have the most experience, but they don't know a single soul. So making people feel comfortable, and when they walk into a meeting, helping them to feel like they're able to contribute and so on. It'll help them to make that decision that they're going to stick around, and they're going to stick around for the long haul. Just like it took you just a few minutes to decide if they were keepers, it's going to take them a few minutes to decide if they're going to stay. So aligning with the values. When a company's culture aligns with the values and their professional goals, it's going to be more fulfilling for their work experience. And if you think about when a new hire comes on board, they've been looking for work for quite a while. So they have a lot of resumes and applications out there. It wouldn't take very much for another company to call and say, hey, you put this application in 2 months ago. Are you still interested? You want to make sure that all the time that you've invested is still worth it. And then a positive engagement or a positive work culture promotes engagement with employees. What are you guys doing to keep your positive work culture in action? What are you doing? Picnics or lunches or themed activities? I always see a lot of Christmas activities. Now that the new year's going, what are we doing?
In the past, we've done a variety of different things as far as like barbecues, chili cook-off. We celebrated Oktoberfest.
Nice.
We've reached out to several individuals of, different cultures to ask them to put something together as far as an activity or something food related, because our team leads by their stomach.
As do many.
As too many, yes. And celebrating the diversity with our organization, and having fun all at the same time, and just really bonding, because we have so many different separate entities within APCO, and it's important for us to share across the aisle, as they say.
Nice, very nice. Food always seems to win. And I love the point that you made, Marianne, with diversity. The trends of diversity have definitely changed in the last couple of months, from diversity and inclusion to inclusion and diversity. But to give people the opportunity to share who they are is so important. I love it. Very good. All right. So to foster that inclusive work environment is really, really important. Defining and communicating those core values, which we hit right on the head a little while ago, and encouraging that open communication, giving people the opportunity to communicate, not holding back, obviously being respectful, and again, promoting that diversity and inclusion. I couldn't have written it myself. Perfect timing. Giving people the opportunity where they're included, and you're aware of what people bring to the table is so incredibly important. When we're talking about open communication, allowing people to share ideas and allowing people to feel comfortable with who they are doesn't mean they have to be the same. It just allows them to be comfortable in sharing their ideas. That's so incredibly important. So a positive work environment might come from different experiences. We've seen it evolve over the course of time. way back in the day, you might have participated in a team building exercise of some sort. I think those have changed a little bit, but they still exist. And it's so important for your team to collaborate. Maybe have an offsite or even a luncheon or something where you're able to interact and communicate, engage with one another, strengthen the bonds of your team. It's less likely that you're referring to your organization as a family today, but you're still a close-knit group that you're interacting and engaging with one another. Those recognition and rewards are still critically important, as we talked about. Wellness initiatives we haven't talked about very much, and we'll talk about those a little bit. Offering wellness programs have evolved quite a bit over the course of time, but there's very, very important, and our focus nowadays is really on mental health. It's evolved since probably about 2021, 2020, focusing on making sure that when people come to work, they're bringing their whole selves and their best selves, and when they leave work for the day, they have resources. If your organization is able to provide support for individuals for wellness initiatives, it's excellent. Years ago, we focused a lot on fitness and physical health. A lot of wellness initiatives today combine physical health with mental health. So if you have a yoga option or even a telehealth type option for mental wellness, that's a huge win that you can offer to employees. And then many employees really appreciate professional development. Professional development does not have to be a training like this where you probably want to poke your eyes out after about 45 minutes to an hour. I apologize. It can be something like a training. It could be a skill enhancement. Some organizations do tuition reimbursement. Really depends on the size of your organization or something along those lines. But there are so many things that employees are offered to really create a culture of learning and development and bringing their whole self to work. Is there anything that your organizations are doing that are unique or different that fall into the lines of positive work culture and bring your whole self to work? I think the most unique thing that I've seen is, I think, along the line of wellness initiatives. That's probably the most cutting edge at this point. And we see things like yoga coming to the office, like a lunch and learn style or something like that. Go ahead, Marianne.
I was just going to bring up, we made some changes in our overall benefits profile to lower costs of like teledoc visits and so forth on for like wellness check-ins as far as mental well-being, as well as lowering costs for any behavioral health that would require more than a, like a telephonic, call. We also do a lot of activities related to like The Biggest Loser, those different things, recipe contests on healthy eating. So a variety of things like that. And we've just recently put a survey out to our teams for 2024 on, what additional upskilling items can we potentially create and offer to our team on, some of those soft skills, some of those, hard skills, based on the diversity of our group and the positions that they, perform. So I've already gotten some really great responses back. So I'm looking forward to compiling that together and putting those things into practice.
Excellent. I think those things are really important. One of the things I found is, even if one person uses that resource, you've made an impact because that one person talks to someone else, and it's worth the investment. Again, thinking about how much money you're essentially losing as an organization when you lose talented individuals. It's worth investing in your employees to make sure they bring their whole self, their best self to work. So those are great resources. And it is a little bit of a change of mindset for us when we've been in the workforce for a long time to start thinking, how do we provide wellness initiatives that will only help a few people? Or, how do we start thinking about X, Y, and Z? But it's definitely worth it. Go ahead, Marianne.
We've also just recently made a change with here in California to, the increase in the sick time through the Healthy Families initiative by adding additional days. We had at the time that rolled out had offered 5 days rather than the compulsory 3 days. And we just upgraded for 2024 to 7 days of sick time. We were even discussing carving those out and making those, mental health days. But at the end of the day, we just said, we'll just put it all together and add an additional 2 and let the individuals determine how they need to take those, that sick time, whether that's mental or physical or any other needs that they need to look after themselves on.
Wow, that 7 days is a big step. And a lot of that, it takes some responsibility from the HR professionals to really have those conversations and explain to the management of why, and help individuals understand that we're investing in our employees, and help employees to understand that we're investing in them. That's great. So moving on to recognizing and rewarding talent, we've talked quite a bit about it, but making sure that no good deed goes unpunished, because it's amazing how many of those efforts can go awry. We want to make sure that it's boosting the morale and engagement. We're not just spinning our wheels, putting the effort in. We want to make sure that it increases the motivation and productivity, and it fosters the loyalty. So if you're going to take the time to recognize individuals, that it's worthwhile. In doing so, make sure that employees feel appreciated, not called out. Make sure that we're recognizing true high performance levels, and make sure that it contributes to the higher retention. So make sure ultimately that it achieves what you're intending to achieve. Make sure that you have clear objectives when you're recognizing and rewarding. And again, going back to the same thing as we talked about with compensation, that you have clear objectives, you're transparent, that you're timely. It's amazing that if you are a day late on an anniversary award, somebody will call you out. So make sure that you are absolutely timely, and that you personalize your recognition. People want to be recognized, but they want to be recognized correctly. So make sure that if you are recognizing individuals, that you do it right, and that you commit to it. And if you start something, that you don't fail. It's critically important that you personalize correctly. With all of those things being said, I'm not calling individuals snowflakes, but people are like snowflakes. Every single person is different. And so it's so important that you are flexible in the approach you take. You adjust your rewards and your recognition to the individuals that you're working with. Each of your workplaces are going to be incredibly different. As we already talked about, you have to offer opportunities to the individuals that you're working with, specific to what's appropriate to your workplace, to the individuals that you have. I mentioned already flexible work arrangements, but what works in one place is not going to work in each place. Sometimes individuals flourish with additional responsibilities and special projects. Other times, that would be the worst punishment on the face of the earth. Let's not punish them. And then I talked a little bit about public recognition and appreciation as well. We don't want to make someone feel inferior if that's not their thing. So focusing a little more on the work-life balance and wellness initiatives, the hot topics today are really reducing burnout and stress. It seems like everything we're doing in this world today is recovering from the faster, quicker, better. So we want to make sure that we're giving people those opportunities. Kind of as Marianne had pointed out, the 2 days or they were considering the 2 days for the mental health. People need to take a break. We're enhancing the well-being and looking at improving retention from just overall mental exhaustion. I think everyone's looking at prioritizing their life from just recovering from mental overwhelming experiences. And that's really what work-life balance and wellness initiatives are focusing on today. Not to say that the Get Fit experiences are gone, but they're definitely not the hot topic of 2024. The focuses are offering resources like counseling services, mental health awareness, stress management. There are a ton of free opportunities, most through your medical online support. There's great resources where you can spend, I'll say $500 as an example for all of your employees, and they charge by the hour. There are great tools out there, online apps. Calm is an excellent one. There are so many different tools that employees can get resources for mental health support, physical initiatives. Years ago, it was a really big thing to partner with the local gyms. Not so much today, but it's still out there, and most companies haven't gone away with it. Health screenings, you can partner with organizations for nutrition counseling. There's just so many things. And again, flexible work arrangements, they're not going away. Even if your company is thinking, gosh, I want them to go away, I don't like them, they're here to stay. We just need to figure out how to partner with them. If you can find managers that are positively working with flexible work arrangements, it's a huge win for helping to keep employees, because unfortunately and fortunately, depending on how you look at it, flexible work arrangements are going to stay. So the best thing you can do to promote work-life balance and wellness initiatives are really to have clear policies and expectations, communicate with your employees. I know in every training you've ever been through, every conversation you've ever been through, you hear communication, and I would be failing us all if I didn't say the word communication, so here it is. Encourage time management and boundaries. I think that's different than years past as well. Working with time and helping employees to manage their time and boundaries. That's a different mindset than past as well. And working within that scope. Leading by example, still very strong, still incredibly important for all individuals. And checking in with individuals. Hey, how are you doing? Is so-and-so doing well? Being human, that's a whole different mindset as well. And empowering individuals to do their job and do it well. That works as well with the mentorship, empowering autonomy, using that Zappos example that we talked about earlier, that when people feel like they're doing their job, people feel like they are successful, people still feel like they're in control of their life, they're going to feel like ultimately they have a balance. Doesn't mean that they can't give or take one or the other. It means that they feel like they can be successful, and success pays in retaining your employees. So what is this all about? Why are we talking about the impact of productivity and talking about wellness? And how does this all go together? Well, there's a direct correlation of happy, healthy, well employees being retained. And it's simply this: when you have a stable workforce that has it all together, when they're healthy and well, and they feel like they're motivated, their employer is focused on them, you're going to have higher productivity. And employees that are well acquainted with their roles, they understand what they have to do. They require less training. I'm not saying that they don't deserve training. I'm saying they require less training to do the basic jobs, and they're more efficient. And when they're more efficient, they contribute to other employees. They contribute to the bottom line, which means more profitability. And if there's more profitability, there's higher retention rates. People that are making money, people that are contributing to a successful company, when the management is happy, when the employees are happy, people stick around. There's cost savings. You're not bleeding at the seams, so to speak. You're not, the HR team isn't constantly trying to onboard people. The management team isn't constantly losing resources trying to train people. You're not losing money with resources trying to recruit and disrupt operations. Ultimately, all of these things are a circular process of maintaining profitability. So it's a positive thing to have a it's kind of like a happy wife is a happy life. It's a happy organization. It is a profitable organization. The cost of turnover can be measured, and it should be measured. And if you can communicate with your co-management team or the individuals within your organization that the recruitment expenses or the onboarding costs, the profitability or the loss of productivity, all of these things make a difference. And most importantly, it's expensive to not retain people. Let it be if you're measuring your retention or your ROI for hiring people, it's incredibly, incredibly expensive. And trying to get us in that hour, and I'm running out of time, I apologize. The best way that you can measure your loss of turnover would be your customer satisfaction, your revenue per employee, your cost savings for your turnover, your regular turnover numbers, your retention numbers. But overall, employee retention is critically impacts your employees, and you will have happier employees if you keep them and you're not constantly turning them over. With that being said, I feel like I've just tried to squeeze the last minute in. Does anyone have anything they want to add, or does anyone have any questions? I'm more than happy to have this conversation, but I hate to push anyone into a longer hour of just torture than they need to be sitting here. Go ahead, Amber.
So I guess, folks, if you come up with questions, if you think of something later, you can reach back out. You're going to get a link to this video, and potentially maybe Becky could even share it in email. But yeah, feel free to utilize this great research or great service that they're offering. Amplified HR is a wonderful new local solution for all of us. And then Becky, I would love it if you could come out to our next HR networking group. A lot of these folks come regularly, so it would be great to meet in person as well.
Absolutely. Cheryl, did you have something?
I did. What do you think about business resource groups, BRGs?
I think it's a great resource. I think it's important to collaborate and find other resources and acquire additional knowledge.
Okay. Yeah, I think that I would bring that up to my my boss in regards to as far as inclusion is concerned, because people could create these resource groups, and it's another term, not just business resource groups. It's the same thing, but they call it something else. But these resource groups, like young professionals, or they can do nationalities, that type of thing, so that people feel like they're finding kind of their people within the company. They can talk about things that they struggle with, or things that go well for them, or how they can mentor each other. That's type of thing.
Yeah, I think sometimes they have their season, if you will, where sometimes it, depending on the group within your organization or the group that is collaborating, it works, and then other times it kind of fades out. But it never hurts to try it, right? And then if it fades, or it doesn't take if it doesn't pick up, then you just go on to something new. Or what I've found is successful in something like that is always define it with a term.
Got it.
So, hey, we're doing this for a quarter, and then next quarter you can choose to either go again or start something new. That way you never look like a failure.
Got it. That makes sense. Thank you.
All right, you guys, thank you so much. And I apologize for brushing through that last bit so quickly, but I wanted to make sure that you didn't have to stay longer than you intended. I know these kind of discussions can really take away from your day when you have so much going on. Okay. Can't hear you, Amber. Amber, you are on mute.
Oh, I was on mute. I said thank you everybody for coming. Thank you, Becky. That was wonderful. And if you have any questions or need anything, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.